Pokémon Legends Arceus. I appreciate this game. Legends Arceus is a departure from what this series has been pretty much since it started, daring to rethink and change core mechanics and systems to an alarming degree, and considering how well known this series is for iterative sequels, that's really commendable. The new ideas presented here encourage strong feelings from anyone with a passion for the series, so of course I have a lot to say. In this video, I'm going to lay out what I found to be the best and the worst aspects of this game. Be warned that full spoilers for Pokémon Legends Arceus are on the table. The best. Number 1, feeling like a trainer. Usually, throughout this series, you play the role of a Pokemon trainer, but this is the most I've actually felt like one. Although you're technically a Pokemon surveyor, exploring these environments to find, catch, and battle wild Pokemon nails the feeling of being a trainer more than anything this series has done before, and it's never felt more personal. For once, filling up the Pokédex actually comes off as believable, since you're accomplishing a variety of things to research Pokemon. Just being able to walk around during a battle, which has very little functionality, helps so much with the perspective of being a trainer. You can send your Pokemon out anytime you want, just to be with them. Using them to collect items, or riding around on them in the overworld, creates a more organic bond. 3D camera control is essential for the immersion, and honestly overdue for the series by this point. How many Pokemon games have you played where there's actually a sense of danger? While I wouldn't call this game difficult, caution is required, such as when sneaking up on something or avoiding attacks. You never had to consider anything like this before. This game focuses on the core elements this franchise has always been about, presenting it all in a way unlike anything from previous entries, and because of that, the world is more engaging than it's ever been. Number 2, catching Pokemon. These catching mechanics are, straight up, a whole lot of fun. I'm honestly shocked they're as good as they are, in function and feel. Sneaking up on a Pokemon and nailing it with a ball to catch it is an absolute joy, and perfectly captures how this concept was always meant to feel. This was clearly playtested through the roof, with such an excellent balance between aiming and catching. There are loads of different options for approaching Pokemon in the wild, so the process stays interesting. Feeding them food, smacking them with mud, creating a smoky cloud to hide in, even whipping a ball at a flying Pokemon in the distance. And even though there are so many options, it's also simple to understand and do. You can even chain multiple catches in just a few seconds, and it's so important that this was possible so you feel like you're hunting down Pokemon in a realistic way. The best part is if you don't like the real-time catching mechanics, for the most part, you don't have to bother with them. You can just battle Pokemon like always to catch them, which is ideal. This flexibility is wonderful to accommodate different players. Legends Arceus proves that a sense of action is exactly what's been missing from this franchise, given how much it absorbs you into the experience. Number 3, streamlining and freshness. For a series known for its faithfulness to tradition, Legends Arceus is a triumph for how much it's willing to try new things. The most appreciated change is how reduced interruptions are, with an enormous focus on speeding everything up. I already mentioned how snappy catching is, but items and notifications are given while playing the game now. Picking things up no longer brings you to a stop to read a text block. You can even send out Pokemon to grab multiple things at a time. Gaining experience is automatically doled out to every Pokemon at once, and couldn't be faster. Tons of time-consuming fanfare has been reduced from encounters, making it quicker than ever to get in and out of battle. Battle is one of the greatest examples of streamlining. Tons of unnecessary pauses and information have been taken out of the system. No longer are you prompted to nickname everything you catch, you can just do this anytime in the menu. And since Pokemon now remember all of their moves, they're learned automatically. Gone are the days of, this Pokemon wants to learn this move, but it already knows 4 moves. Menus and interfaces are also a huge step up. Items are on the same screen as your Pokemon now, which is fantastic since everything you regularly use is on one page. Evolution is triggered when you want to do it, which is very user-friendly, and the notoriously restrictive trade evolutions are finally reduced to a simple evolution item. Beyond even all of this streamlining, one of the best decisions is the removal of EVs and IVs. Well, alright, IVs technically still exist to decide the base stats of wild Pokemon, but essentially, now, any Pokemon you catch can be the best of its species. No longer do you have to feel like the in-game team you played through with is useless garbage because of inferior base stats and a bunch of random EVs they built up throughout the game. Now, the only way to supplement your stats are effort levels, which are not only easy to raise up and understand, but can be viewed directly at all times. The boosts are noticeable in battle, so powering them up this way feels rewarding. These removals will undoubtedly turn off players who enjoy the chase of getting a perfect Pokemon, but I don't miss it one bit. Anyone deep into Pokemon understands how disappointing it is to catch something only to learn it's subpar because of randomly generated stats. But now that they remember all their moves and natures can be easily changed, anything you get can be the best of its kind. This allows them to feel less like artificial bags of stats that you can fully connect with. I can love my starter knowing there's nothing holding it back. And Pokemon remembering all their moves now is phenomenal. This highly encourages experimentation and ensures every new move learned is satisfying. Number 4, rethinking battles. A lot of players are attached to Pokemon's traditional battle system. I am not one of them. It's fine as it's been, but I don't think it's seen a meaningful change since Generation 4. Legends Arceus at least tries several new ideas to change up combat, the largest new additions being the agile and strong battle styles you can infuse moves with to affect their power, speed, and accuracy. These styles also require double the PP, finally taking advantage of that resource in an interesting way, and adding another layer to decision making. Even so, a lot of simplification has been done to battle. Abilities and hold items are gone. Stat boosts and status effects now wear off over time, and status effects can even be overwritten by new ones. It's nice to no longer feel like a Pokemon's been ruined because they're burned, or you'll inevitably be swept because something has a power boost. There's more flexibility to how battles can play out. Freeze, sleep, and confusion are also all gone, and while that does mean the remaining status effects feel a bit homogenized, this allows for more interactivity. Damage is a bit more realistic now. A Pokemon multiple levels under their opponent can use a strong move and still deal a decent amount of damage. Being overleveled is no longer an automatic win button, where you can spam a single move and take everything out. All Pokemon can contribute in battle now, even if they're significantly underleveled, and that not only feels more believable, but creates a more engaging battle system since you can never fully go on autopilot. I like that underleveled Pokemon can still make a difference, and plenty of species who were difficult to use at all due to poor stat layouts are much more viable here. Capturing wild Pokemon is also far easier, since you have more control over the power of your attacks. Number 5, a few more things. I'm just gonna list these off. I like that filling the Pokédex is the primary goal here. In the past, this task would feel secondary to whatever story's trying to be told, so I like that it stays the focus. The main town, although lacking in interesting areas, is cozy enough and has a nostalgic Nintendo 64 kind of vibe to it. And it's nice that most requests help the townspeople become closer with Pokemon. The new evolution animation has a nice build-up and punch to it. Fleeing a wild battle is now 100% effective, and it's about dang time. Traversal feels fluid, and the riding challenges to burst balloons showcase how smoothly you can swap between mounts. The unknown hunt is a lot of fun, with reasonable clues to track each letter down. It's satisfying to complete. Last thing is of course some of these sweet new Pokemon. Hisuian Typhlosion looks gnarly as hell with his flames on, but is also adorable. Hisuian Zoroark is also wicked cool, with its blood-stained body and undulating tendrils. I always wanted a spiky sea mine kind of Pokemon, and Overquill not only nails that beautifully, but has one of the best names in the series. Shout out to Goodra with its endearing smile. And Enamorous? Yeah, get wrecked, other genies. She's freaking sweet. But man, I have a lot of good things to say about this game. Legends Arceus has plenty of successful new ideas. I'm happy to see such bold decisions, but perhaps inevitably, with so many fresh new changes, not all of them are going to work out. The worst. Number 1, visuals. I mean, obviously, right? Look at this. Get ready for gravy cliffsides and vomit fields. Very often, visuals look muddy or fuzzy, which is especially noticeable when exploring the town. Textures on terrain and objects like trees are straight out of 20 years ago. Long-distance views show barren wastelands, since only the most basic essentials are rendered. Look at this shot. This is so empty it looks unfinished, like you're playing a beta map. Water is some kind of material. Once in a while, things don't look too bad when lighting and graphical effects line up in just the right way. But for the most part, this is a world made out of mashed potatoes and paper mache. Character models are a mixed bag. Sometimes they're alright, but often in scenes they look so blurry and unpolished, it's distracting. Thankfully, the Pokémon look the best, which is absolutely what matters most. Honestly, despite how rough everything looks, the aesthetic shortcomings are fairly easy to ignore. The core gameplay is engaging enough to distract from the of the surroundings, and the graphical concessions made are likely why loading times are so snappy and lag is so rare. With that considered, the visuals are a clear low point of Legends Arceus, but at least they allow for a smoother playing experience. Number 2, unpolished new qualities. Real-time action is new territory for the Pokémon series, and unsurprisingly, a lot of it could be smoothed out. In particular, dodging attacks and throwing bombs. While dodging gives you a fair amount of invulnerability frames, there's quite a delay afterwards. It's a very committed action, and as a result, punishing for relying on it. It's also your one and only skill to avoid damage. It's very easy to get hit the first time you fight a noble, since you don't know how their moves work, what their hitboxes are, or anything. So naturally, you'll take damage just learning the battle. And that's fine. Learning enemy attacks is inevitable with this kind of system, but my primary issue is there's no way to heal if you take damage. The game seems to be aware of this too, since it lets you restart fights with the damage you've already dealt done, which why not just have regenerating health for your character then? You slowly regenerate health in the overworld, but not if a Pokemon's after you, and during boss fights, they'll always be after you, so even if you manage long stretches of time without getting hit, you still won't restore any health, and they'd be more enjoyable if it wasn't designed this way. Some of the later nobles have long phases of dodging attacks, with Electrode being the worst offender, and Arcanine is very easy to lose to on your first try. My other issue is how discouraged playing proactively is because of how slow it is to throw bombs. You have to play these battles safely, and you're almost always punished for trying to sneak a quick throw-in. If dodging and throwing were faster, these encounters would flow better, and if health regenerated from avoiding damage, you'd be rewarded for doing so, and fights would feel less like losing battles. So yeah, while these fights are a nice change of pace, and can even feel invigorating, their limited design ensures there's plenty of room for improvement. Number 3, cryptic solutions. Evolutionary requirements have gotten more complicated over the years, and Legends Arceus has several new Pokémon with obtuse methods for evolution that nothing in the game hints at. Ursaluna's the standout example, needing a fairly rare item that only works during a full moon. Good luck figuring that out without any help. Stantler and Quillfish are also pretty bad, asking you to use certain moves in certain battle styles 20 times for evolution, which I suppose you'll stumble upon eventually if you're using them throughout the game, but only if you're using the right combination, and you won't even know what caused it. Lastly's Basculin, who needs to take at least 294 hit points in recoil damage without fainting, and yeah, another one you might stumble into, but what the hell with these? Why are they so specific, with nothing in the game guiding you to a solution? I admit that working out how to evolve a Pokémon can feel rewarding, but not when it's this cryptic. But this brings us to our next point. Let's talk about the Sea's Legend, the worst quest in the game. You're tasked with tracking down the mysterious seafaring Pokemon Manaphy, with the only clue being a book that spoke about it called The Sea's Legend, which isn't in the game. In fact, nothing in this game gives you any clue at all as to how to complete this quest outside of that book title. And God help you if you try to figure this out on your own, because the solution is shimmering platinum bullshit. The answer is in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Aha. Yup, that stupid book is in another video game. You can get bent with that. It was cute, dare I say iconic, when Metal Gear Solid put a code in a screenshot on the back of the CD case. It is not cute when you're expected to have bought a completely separate $60 game. And even if you did, you're unlikely to remember some random book on a shelf when you're playing this. What remains is a quest that will frustrate anyone trying to complete it on their own, since you can spend hours searching endlessly for clues to no avail, until finally looking it up online, only to realize there was no reasonable way to figure it out in the game itself. If this quest was only unlocked with save data of those titles, that would be one thing, but it's included by default. And you could say,
you can just look it up online.
But what kind of quest design is that? It's designed in a way to be unfulfilling to most players, and probably my least favorite thing in the whole game. Number 4. A limited Pokédex. The focus of Legends Arceus is completing the Pokédex, and that's easier than ever because there are less than 250 Pokémon in the entire game. I'm not a fan of Pokémon being unavailable, and while I totally understand this game not including all of them, this is still a very low number. Discovering new things to catch is the most exciting thing about Pokémon's formula, so it's a shame to see so many repeats while exploring the later areas. Quite a few families are overly present, and the choices hurt this further. Outside of a handful of new forms and Pokemon, everything in Legends Arceus is from generations 1 through 4. And while I understand there not being more recent additions considering the setting, it would have been worth making more exceptions for the sake of freshness and variety. This is more relatable the more of this series you've experienced. So for me, it's a little tired when I see a bunch of Machop and Psyduck running around a brand new Pokemon game. I've caught them so many times before, they're just not exciting to come by. A lot of these are classics, and I'm not saying I wish they weren't here, but if more recent or entirely new Pokemon were included, there'd be a much stronger sense of discovery and reward to exploration. Number 5, a lot of little things. I'm just gonna list these off. The weakest part of catching is definitely when riding Basculegion. It's smoother than I expected it to be, but it's way too difficult to sneak up on something in the water. You basically have to use smoke bombs. It's also very easy to miss since hitboxes are often obscured by the water. Darkrai and Shaman aren't available unless you have save data from other Pokemon games, which is never an appreciated practice, but at least they're not required to meet Arceus. The final antagonist, Volo, is another madman recreate the world type of character, which is never interesting or relatable. These kinds of antagonists are very played out in this series by now. I get that he's supposed to parallel Cyrus from Diamond and Pearl, but enough already. The whole this game takes place in the past world building stuff is a bit on the nose with the referential character designs and inconsistent technology, harming the believability of the world quite a bit. A lot more thought could have been put into it. While I don't think voice acting would have benefited the game, dead silence when lines are coming out isn't the answer either. A grunt or some other kind of noise to give an impression of a voice would lend a lot more life to these characters. The camera sometimes goes crazy when looking for items on Ursa Luna. It fights against you at times. Throwing an item by a corner can sometimes result in it hitting an invisible wall, which ideally wouldn't happen in a game about stealthily throwing things. Braviary would be better mapped to its own button instead of being in line with the other mounts. I would often accidentally take flight while swapping through them. But because fall damage is easy to trigger, it'd be nice if it had its own button. You can barely manage to climb up even the smallest of slopes, which feels a little too restrictive. The last thing is the Tornadus encounter, which is just annoying. He's fast, surrounded by Glalie, and spams tornadoes that are really easy to get hit by. I guess you can keep your distance with feather balls, but yeah. I had a bunch of fun up close. And that covers everything. Pokémon Legends Arceus abandons a lot of conventions, but replaces them with some of the most inventive and straight up fun mechanics the series has ever seen. You can do so much with the Pokemon formula, and the courage shown here in challenging traditions has filled me with enthusiasm for where this series goes in the future. Despite all of its changes, this game lets me feel like a trainer more than ever, and in a lot of ways captures the core concepts of this series better than most of its predecessors. Even if the Pokemon franchise never really clicked with you, if exploring and building a team sounds like fun, it's worth giving this a try. Just don't expect a compelling narrative. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked my video, subscribe and check out my Patreon. Thank you so much to my patrons for your support. I'll see you next time.